When my daughter-in-law locked me out of the house I helped build, she said it was for the best. I walked away with a single suitcase, thinking I'd lost everything. 6 months later, she was paying rent, to me. When my son married Rachel, I thought I'd finally have the daughter I never had. She was polite, charming, and always smiled when she spoke to me. For years, I believed she loved me as family. But the day my husband died, everything changed. I've lived in this house for 40 years. My late husband, George, built it with his own hands, and we raised our son, Michael, here. It's a modest, 2-story home on a quiet street, filled with memories. The walls still smell faintly of his aftershave, and the garden he tended blooms faithfully every spring. When George passed away, Michael insisted that I move in with him and Rachel. "Mom, you shouldn't be alone," he said. "We'll take care of you." At the time, it felt like love. Now I realize it was pity, and perhaps convenience. I sold my house, putting the money toward an addition on their home. The idea was that I'd have my own space, a small apartment attached to their main house. I even transferred part of the deed into Michael's name, thinking it would make things easier for the future. Biggest mistake of my life. At first, it was fine. Rachel was sweet and attentive. She'd bring me tea, chat about her day, and even ask for my recipes. But small things began to change. She stopped knocking before coming in. She'd criticize how I folded laundry or commented that I hovered around Michael too much. I brushed it off. After all, marriages take adjustment. Then one evening, while setting the table for dinner, I overheard her whispering to Michael in the kitchen. "Your mother is everywhere. I can't relax in my own home." Michael said something I couldn't hear. She sighed. "We need space. It's not normal for a married couple to have a parent living with them full-time." That night, I lay awake in my room, the walls closing in around me. I told myself it was just stress talking, grief, pressure, maybe hormones. But a few weeks later, the truth came knocking, quite literally. Rachel stood at my door one morning, holding a cup of coffee she didn't intend to share. "Margaret," she said softly, "we've been talking. We think it would be better if you found your own place." I blinked, sure I'd misheard. "What?" "You're still young and healthy," she continued. "You deserve independence. Michael and I need privacy to start our own family." I felt my throat tighten. "This is my home too," I said quietly. Her smile didn't falter. "Technically, part of it is. But you signed over the deed, remember? You said you trusted us to take care of everything." That was the moment I realized just how naive I'd been. Michael avoided eye contact for weeks. When I tried to talk to him, he'd mutter things like "it's just temporary, Mom," or "Rachel means well." I wanted to believe him, but the growing emptiness in the house told a different story. Soon after, I started noticing small changes. My belongings moved, kitchen cabinets reorganized, my favorite chair accidentally placed in storage. It was as if Rachel was erasing me, piece by piece. Then, one afternoon, I came home from a walk to find my key no longer worked. When I rang the bell, Rachel opened the door, feigning surprise. "Oh, Margaret, I meant to tell you. We had the locks changed. You should have asked before coming by. It's confusing when you're not living here anymore." "Not living here?" I whispered. My chest burned. "Where am I supposed to go?" She shrugged, calm as ever. "You can stay with your sister for a while. We'll figure something out later." Michael stood behind her, silent. He didn't even look at me. I left that day with a single suitcase, tears streaming down my face, and the sound of Rachel's voice echoing behind me. "It's for the best." For weeks, I stayed with my sister, Carol. I tried not to talk about what happened, too ashamed to admit how thoroughly I'd been fooled. But one night, over tea, Carol finally asked, "What are you going to do, Margaret? You can't just let them take everything." That's when the idea began to form. Small, quiet, dangerous. I still had the paperwork from when we transferred the deed. And though Rachel thought she'd taken control, there were loopholes. The addition, technically, was built with funds from the sale of my home. Which meant part of it, the part one lived in, could still be legally considered mine. I reached out to a lawyer, an old friend of George's, who looked over the documents and raised his eyebrows. "Well, Margaret," he said with a grin, "you may have lost your key, but you didn't lose your rights." For the first time in months, I smiled. If Rachel wanted me gone so badly, I'd give her exactly what she wanted, but on my terms. With my lawyer's help, I discovered something that Rachel clearly hadn't thought through. The contract transferring ownership was incomplete. The clause defining the property's extension had been left pending further evaluation, meaning the attached apartment technically remained in my name. The very space she kicked me out of. It took months of paperwork, meetings, and waiting for approvals, but eventually, I regained control of my portion of the property. My lawyer advised me carefully. "You can't evict them," he said. "But you can certainly set boundaries. And collect rent." I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in a long while. Rachel had kicked me out of the home I helped build. Now, I would make her my tenant. The day I filed the ownership documents, I felt something shift inside me, not anger, not revenge, but justice. It wasn't about getting even. It was about reclaiming what was rightfully mine. I didn't tell Michael or Rachel right away. I wanted everything legally finalized first. During those weeks, I focused on myself. I found a small apartment downtown, near the library, and started volunteering. I cooked dinner for Carol and her husband on Sundays. Slowly, life started to feel normal again. Then one afternoon, I got a text from Michael, "Mom, we're having a small family barbecue. You should come. My heart twisted. Maybe this was a peace offering. Maybe they'd realized how wrong they'd been. I told myself to be cautious but hopeful. When I arrived, Rachel greeted me at the door, her smile strained. "Margaret," she said, "you look well." "I am," I replied simply. Michael seemed nervous, fidgeting with the grill tongs. We made small talk, the kind that feels like stepping through glass. Laughter from their friends floated through the air, but I couldn't stop glancing at the house, my house, the window boxes I'd planted, the curtains I'd chosen. At one point, Rachel said lightly, "We're thinking of remodeling the apartment. Maybe rent it out to help with expenses." "Oh," I said, sipping my lemonade. "That's interesting. You should check the ownership first before doing any renovations." Her smile faltered. "Excuse me." I looked straight at her. "You might want to talk to your lawyer about the extension's title. I made some updates." She blinked, confused, then tried to brush it off. "I'm sure everything's in Michael's name now." I smiled. That's what I thought too. That evening, I went home and slept better than I had in months. A few weeks later, they got the official letter, a notice of ownership confirmation, addressed to both of them, stating that the attached apartment was legally under my sole possession. I imagine Rachel's face when she read it. Priceless. Michael called me immediately. "Mom, what is this?" "It's what it looks like," I said evenly. "The apartment you asked me to leave is still mine." He stammered. "But we live here. You can't just..." "I'm not asking you to move," I interrupted. "But if you're using my space, there will be a formal rental agreement. It's only fair." Silence. Then, Rachel won't like this. I smiled to myself. I'm sure she won't. But it's not up to her. The next week, my lawyer drafted a contract. I insisted on reasonable terms, nothing vindictive. The rent was fair, the conditions clear. I didn't need revenge, I needed respect. When I arrived at the house to present the papers, Rachel opened the door, eyes cold. "So this is what you're doing now? Trying to humiliate us?" "No," I said softly. "I'm just protecting what's mine. Something you should have done before you threw me out." She looked like she wanted to argue, but Michael stepped in. "Let's just sign it," he muttered. I could tell it killed her pride. Her hand trembled as she signed the last page. Afterward, I stood in the doorway for a moment, looking around the home that had once been my entire world. "You know," I said quietly, "George built these walls with his hands. He'd be heartbroken to see how we treat family now." Then I left without waiting for a reply. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and reread the lease agreement. Seeing their signatures beneath mine was surreal. Poetic, almost. I wasn't their burden anymore. I was their landlord. Word got around in the neighborhood, of course. Small towns have big mouths. Some people thought I was being petty. Others said it was the best revenge story they'd ever heard. But to me, it wasn't revenge, it was balance. Every first of the month, right on time, a check arrived in my mailbox, signed neatly by Rachel Parker, my daughter-in-law, my tenant. And every time, I smiled. Months passed, and life settled into an unexpected rhythm. Rachel avoided me as much as possible, which suited me just fine. Michael still called once in a while, though our conversations were careful and short. It hurt sometimes, but peace often does when you've spent your life walking on eggshells. Then one day, I got a letter, an official notice from the city. Apparently, Michael and Rachel had applied for home renovations that required my approval as the partial owner of the property. The irony made me laugh so hard I nearly spilled my tea. When the contractor called to confirm the details, I politely said, "I'll approve it, once they pay the outstanding balance for the last 2 months." Rachel showed up at my door that evening, furious. "You're making our lives miserable," she hissed. "Rachel," I said calmly, "you made your choices. I'm simply following the law." She glared at me. "You're punishing us." I shook my head. "No. I'm teaching you what respect looks like." Her jaw tightened, and for the first time, I saw something like regret flicker in her eyes. "Michael doesn't deserve this," she said quietly. "No," I agreed. But neither did I. Weeks turned into months. The checks continued to arrive, always signed with that same tight, resentful handwriting. But little by little, something shifted. One afternoon, I found a small note tucked into the envelope. It said, "Thank you for letting us stay. Rachel. It wasn't an apology, not exactly, but it was a start. A few weeks later, Michael called. "Mom," he said hesitantly, "Rachel's pregnant." For a moment, my chest tightened. I hadn't expected that kind of news to sting, but it did. Still, I managed a genuine smile. "Congratulations, sweetheart." He exhaled in relief. "We'd like you to be part of the baby's life. I know things have been complicated." "Complicated," I repeated softly, almost laughing. "That's one word for it." But I meant it when I said yes. When that baby was born, a beautiful girl with dark eyes and George's dimple, all the bitterness I'd been carrying began to fade. Rachel let me hold her, and for the first time in years, her smile reached her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For everything." I nodded, tears threatening to spill. "Let's just start fresh." And we did. Slowly, carefully, not as mother and daughter-in-law, but as two women who had learned hard lessons about pride, pain, and forgiveness. By the time my granddaughter turned 2, things had changed completely. Rachel and I began to share recipes again. We'd take turns babysitting. I even joined them for Sunday dinners, the same table where she once asked me to leave. Life, it seems, has a dark sense of humor. Then, one evening, as the sun dipped low and laughter filled the kitchen, Rachel handed me an envelope. "You'll want to read this," she said. Inside was a copy of a property transfer form. The apartment, my old home, was being signed back into my name completely. "We want you to have it," she said softly. "You earned it." I looked at her for a long moment. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "It's where you belong." And in that moment, I realized something profound. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting what someone did to you. It's about taking your power back and choosing peace anyway. That night, I sat by the window of my apartment, the same one where I'd once cried myself to sleep after being locked out. The air was quiet, the garden outside bathed in moonlight, and I felt George beside me somehow, proud. I raised my glass to the night and whispered, "We did it, love. We got our home back." Life had come full circle. I wasn't the woman who'd been thrown out anymore. I was the woman who owned her story, and her home, again.